Okay, I'm Kenneth Coslow. I'm going to be 88 years old, July 5th, 2010. And I was born in Manhattan, in Women's Hospital, 110th Street. And my father and mother and I, we all lived in Manhattan all of our lives. And going back to when my sister was born, after that, my mother had an embolism, and they had no way of treating it except to have the patient stay in bed without moving for, I think it was 6 weeks, and I'm thinking that maybe it could be as much as 6 months till the embolism cleared up. There were no medications. Now, when my mother was so bedridden, I had an aunt, my father's sister, Rose Sternberg, had an English nurse, whose name I can't recall, who was a wonderful woman, and she sent this woman over to take care of my mother. And my family was a very, shall we say, bossy group of people. This woman very diplomatically kept everybody in line, because no one could see my mother except my father. Anyone that could come there. So after time went by, I stayed at my aunt's house nearby. So one day it occurred to me, I have to go and see my mother. I was around 4 years old maybe. So I went down the stairs, around the block, up the stairs, and I rang the bell, and I said, how is the patient today? And this nurse said to me, Doctor, patient is fine today. Would you like to see her? You can stay for 5 minutes. So in I marched through the living room, the hall, and I went into the bedroom, and there was my mother lying there. And when she saw me, she was so happy. So was I. So it was a very happy visit. I guess I can never forget it.
So, did your mom?
After a prolonged period, I can't say how long, but many weeks and months, because I lived with my aunt around the corner. She did recover, and she came back to herself, but I don't think she could ever have any more children. It's too dangerous.
So, is just you and your sister?
My sister and my sister was a beautiful girl, still is, and my mother was very happy with her. My sister was very close with my father. Unfortunately, the medicine in those days, my father was a very strong man. He had what you call I can't think of it, the European style build, I think was called, those mountains out there in Europe.
The Alps?
Yeah, the Alpine build. He was very strong in his torso, and he had lightning fast hands. Now, he was in the Navy, and one day when there was a tremendous storm, a huge wave came in and almost scuttled the ship. So the fellas came over to my father, all Gentile guys, and they said to him, would you pray, lead us in prayer? And my father did, because he was a silent guy, the opposite of some of his other relatives. So when my father met my mother, he wore his Navy uniform. My mother was a little embarrassed to walk around with a guy in a Navy uniform in those days. So they were married, and we had the 2 children. And unfortunately, my father contracted some kind of pulmonary disease. And in those days, there was no medication whatsoever for that. So my father, who had hung out on 110th Street in Manhattan with Benny Lennon, I don't know if you know him, he was a great, I think it was lightweight champion of the world, the first Jewish guy to be that good. He was a scientific boxer and a classic guy. He had a hard job reaching out the end. So my father seemed to learn from him. And I only saw once when some big guy was picking on me. You know, one time he ever said anything about protect me or anything. He said, "Oh, is this the guy?" Yeah. He hit the guy in the jaw. He was a great big guy, bigger than, and the guy just stood stunned. And then he said to the fella, "You know, you ought to be able to get along with each other." He said, "Well, why don't you just be a friendly guy?" And believe it or not, we became very friends with these guys. So that was the one time I saw him action against anybody else. I know one time that another thing that he had a way with.
Yeah, one more minute. Yeah. Go ahead.
He had a way with animals, and he found an injured cat on the street, so he picked him up and took him up into the place where he worked and took care of it. And this animal became like a tiger, used to run around, and the only person that would get near him was my father, feed him or anything. So on. The sad part of the story was my father declined, his health declined, and before that, I think I was 13 years old.
1 minute.
I said to my father, "I'm not taking orders from you anymore," and I put my hands up. I said, "Let's settle this." So before I could blink an eye, my father stepped on my foot and hit me in the jaw, and I was stunned. And then he stopped and he said, "This hurt me more than it hurt you." And it hurt me for about 2 weeks.